For as long as humans have looked up at the night sky, Mars has stood out, a glowing red point that feels both close and unreachable. It has inspired myths, fueled science fiction, and driven some of the most ambitious scientific missions ever attempted. But beyond the curiosity lies a serious and fascinating question. Could humans actually survive there right now? Not in a distant future filled with advanced cities and terraforming, but today with the technology we currently have. At first glance, Mars doesn't seem entirely alien. It has seasons, polar ice caps, and a day length surprisingly similar to Earth's. These similarities make it feel like a potential second home. But beneath that familiar surface lies a harsh and unforgiving reality. Mars is not just different, it is fundamentally hostile to human life in ways that challenge every system in our bodies. To understand whether survival is possible, we need to move past the dream and confront the science. What does Mars actually demand from a human being? And more importantly, what would it take for a human to last more than just a few minutes on its surface? Before even thinking about living on Mars, there is the journey itself, a long, isolating trip through space that can take around 6 to 9 months, depending on planetary alignment. During this time, astronauts are exposed to microgravity, which gradually weakens muscles and bones. At the same time, they face continuous exposure to space radiation, far beyond what we experience on Earth. The psychological challenge is just as significant. Imagine being confined to a small spacecraft, millions of kilometers away from Earth with no immediate way back. Communication delays mean that even a simple message can take several minutes to travel between Mars and Earth. This creates a sense of complete isolation, a level of separation no human has ever experienced before. By the time astronauts arrive, they are already physically strained and mentally tested. And yet the real challenge hasn't even started. Because Mars is not a place that welcomes visitors, it is a place that immediately tests whether you can survive at all. On Earth, breathing is effortless. It's something we rarely think about. But on Mars, every single breath must be artificially created. The Martian atmosphere is extremely thin, less than 1% of Earth's atmospheric pressure, and composed mostly of carbon dioxide. Oxygen, the gas that keeps us alive, is almost non-existent. If a human were suddenly exposed to this environment, the effects would be immediate and severe. Without sufficient pressure, the body cannot function normally. Oxygen deprivation would quickly lead to loss of consciousness. This means survival is entirely dependent on a pressurized suit or habitat that can replicate Earth-like conditions. Even with such technology, maintaining a stable internal environment is complex. Every system must work perfectly. Oxygen supply, pressure regulation, carbon dioxide removal. There is no margin for error. On Mars, breathing is not natural. It is a continuous technological achievement. Mars is often described as a desert, but it is not the kind of desert we are familiar with. It is a frozen desert, where temperatures rarely rise to comfortable levels. The average temperature sits far below freezing, and during the night it can drop to levels that would quickly overwhelm the human body. This cold affects everything. Equipment becomes brittle, batteries lose efficiency. Even simple mechanical systems can fail under such extreme conditions. For humans, maintaining body temperature becomes a constant battle. Without advanced thermal protection, exposure would rapidly lead to hypothermia. Unlike Earth, where warmth can often be found naturally, Mars offers no such comfort. Heat must be generated, preserved, and carefully controlled at all times. Survival depends not just on staying alive, but on constantly resisting the planet's attempt to freeze everything in place. One of the less obvious dangers of Mars is something you cannot see, feel, or hear: radiation. Earth is protected by a powerful magnetic field and a thick atmosphere that deflect harmful cosmic rays and solar radiation. Mars, however, lacks both of these protective layers. As a result, its surface is constantly exposed to high levels of radiation. Over time, this exposure can damage DNA, increase cancer risk, and affect overall health. For short missions, this risk can be managed, but for long-term survival, it becomes a major obstacle. To counter this, habitats would need to be heavily shielded, possibly built underground or covered with thick layers of Martian soil. Even then, complete protection is difficult. Living on Mars would mean constantly managing a threat that never goes away, an invisible force that quietly affects every living cell. Water is essential for survival, Yet on Mars it is not readily accessible in a usable form. While there is evidence of frozen water beneath the surface and at the poles, extracting and converting it into liquid water requires advanced systems and significant energy. Food presents an even greater challenge. There are no natural ecosystems, no plants, no animals, nothing that can sustain human life. This means all food must either be brought from Earth or grown in controlled environments. These environments must carefully regulate light, temperature, humidity, and nutrients to support plant growth. This creates a closed-loop system where nothing can be wasted. Every drop of water must be recycled. Every resource must be carefully managed. Survival becomes a constant process of balancing inputs and outputs, ensuring that nothing runs out. Mars has significantly lower gravity than Earth, and while this might seem like a minor detail, it has profound effects on the human body. In lower gravity, muscles are used less, leading to gradual weakening. Bones lose density because they are not under the same stress as on Earth. Over time, this can result in reduced strength, increased risk of fractures, and changes to how the body functions overall. The cardiovascular system also adapts, potentially affecting how blood is distributed throughout the body. To counter these effects, astronauts would need to follow strict exercise routines and possibly use specialized equipment to simulate gravity. Even then, the long-term impact of living in low gravity is not fully understood. Surviving on Mars is not just about enduring the environment. It's about adapting to a completely different physical reality. Since Mars cannot naturally support human life, survival depends on creating artificial environments that replicate the conditions we need. These habitats would act as self-contained ecosystems, providing air, water, food, and protection. Designing such systems is incredibly complex. They must be reliable, efficient, and capable of operating for long periods without failure. Redundancy becomes essential. Backup systems must be in place for every critical function. Inside these habitats, life might feel somewhat normal, but outside, the planet remains as hostile as ever. This creates a unique situation where humans are not truly living on Mars, but rather living inside protective bubbles placed on its surface. The line between survival and disaster is defined by the stability of these systems. Mars represents both a challenge and an opportunity. It forces us to rethink what survival means and pushes the limits of our technology and understanding. While we are not yet ready to live there freely, each mission and each discovery brings us closer to that possibility. In the future, advancements in technology may allow us to build more sustainable habitats, develop better protection against radiation, and even find ways to use local resources more effectively. What seems impossible today may become achievable tomorrow. For now, Mars remains a distant frontier, a place where survival is possible, but only under strict conditions. It reminds us of the delicate balance that makes life on Earth possible, and challenges us to imagine what it would take to recreate that balance somewhere else. If you enjoyed this video, kindly subscribe, like, comment, and share for amazing content like this. Thank you for watching.